Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there. Like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Everyone views reality through a specific lens, a point of view. If you have a small range of experiences and information, you will have a small level of awareness and understanding. However, if you have a broad range of experiences and information, you will have an expanded level of awareness and understanding. So, what could be crucial and life-changing information to one person will be meaningless to the other due to their level of awareness and understanding about the nature of reality. This is important to understand because collectively, the frame of reference maintains societal and cultural paradigms. For example, 500 years of slavery was made possible due to the mental conditioning of the people of the world. Generations of indoctrination maintained the corrupt system set in place. Jacques Fresco speaks in depth about the psychological construction of the blueprint of reality. He demonstrates that the human brain arrives to a conclusion using bits of information based on the person's frame of reference.
It is not possible for any human being to build a frame of reference of any kind without experience.
Everything you've seen, heard, read, or learned in some way has shaped your view of reality within a frame of reference.
We're talking about the forces that shape human behavior. I believe that all human behavior is lawful. That the reactions and values that all people have are perfectly lawful to the environment that they come from. So every human being is perfectly well adjusted from where they are coming from their background and experience.
This means, depending on where you are born and raised, you will develop in accordance with the society presented to you, the immediate family household, the people you surround yourself with, the language spoken, the religious doctrine, and the system of governing are all residual forces shaping your frame of reference.
We're victims of culture. We look at the world with our background. We have no other way of doing it. Psychology is kind of a rudimentary form today, an attempt to grasp at the factors that shape human behavior, the factors that are responsible for the way we look at ourselves, other people, and the way we behave, or, if you wish, misbehave. I don't believe that any human being misbehaves. They use whatever tools they know of, whatever tools they're familiar with.
If one is raised in a distorted environment, which we all are, they will have a distorted view of reality. All societies currently presented to humanity are distorted. From the architectural design of cities to the social paradigms that we are all a part of, resulting in the segregation of the human race as well as the destruction of the planet. It is said that one brain cell is useless, but the billions of them together give rise to the experience of being a human being. In the same way, the billions of humans alive today collectively give rise to the societal paradigms, economic systems, and doctrines that govern our lives. All this is made possible by the shaping of each individual's frame of reference. Together, we maintain the control systems set in place, which were designed to serve the interests of the ruling elite, who seek to maximize profits regardless of social or environmental loss. It doesn't matter which country or societal paradigm you were born into. All systems presented to mankind around the world are forms of monarchies disguised as systems that we call communism and capitalism and so on. Monarchies are based on primitive systems that were designed a long time ago in the depths of prehistory. We deem the systems presented to us to be a product of human nature, simply because, over the course of time, humans structured civilizations based on hierarchies. From a historical perspective, there has always been rulers, fortifying the illusion that the desire to rule over one another is all part of human nature. It is true in the natural world that animals compete with one another and follow hierarchies, but all things in nature are based on the balance of life that has maintained itself for billions of years, whereas the self-destructive civilizations we've created do not adhere to the balance of life. And they never last. No human civilization has ever survived for very long because people do not include the knowledge of our connection to the planet into our collective frame of reference. And so, our collective frame of reference is lacking the critical bits of information about ourselves and thus adhere to distorted ideologies that continue to brainwash the masses. Should one expand their awareness of the nature of reality, one would see that all societal structures presented to mankind are obsolete. The human race operates within a limited awareness range, stunting the physical and spiritual evolution of our species, manifesting the corrupt systems that control our lives. From educational systems, political systems, monetary systems, and all systems of government. They are all immersed in corruption and continue to operate based off of generational indoctrination. Many believe that humanity requires control systems to prevent chaos, that the atrocities committed around the world is all part of human nature. However, Jacques Fresco shows us the contrary.
It is not human nature, it's human behavior that's shaped by culture. There is varying degrees of human behavior. If we wish to understand the factors that generate our value system, that generate the way we look at the world, you have to go back in time and study these things.
Each and every one of us is a victim of culture. We did not choose to be born in any one society. We are just simply brought up into different circumstances. This is important to understand when debunking human nature. The illusion of human nature arises when humans behave within a set of circumstances over a long period of time. For example, greed can only exist within societies that value currencies and commodities. War can only exist when humans are forced to compete over resources. People pontificate that competition is part of nature, that animals dominate one another to maintain hierarchies. While competition is an aspect of nature to be sure, it does not represent nature in totality. Nature predominantly relies on the balance between organisms and environmental processes, which work in synchronicity with one another to make life possible. Humanity, however, has diverged from this balance and created our own system in place of our natural world. Our system is based on ideologies that regard nature as a mechanistic accident, and therefore manifested our civilizations in accordance to these ideologies, putting a focus on competition and the accumulation of natural resources and material objects. And we've been doing so for as long as recorded history shows. But for those who have seen my previous documentaries, we would know that human history is not the total history of humanity, for there is a much larger story lost to us. Humans have remained the same, anatomically speaking, for 200,000 years, the same brain shape and size, as well as the capacity for intelligence. And as we continue to find more clues about the past, we realize that we are missing at least 195,000 years of the human story. So when we reference recorded history as the basis for human nature, we are referencing only a phase of human behavior within a set period of time, in this case, the last 6,000 years, which is not a fair assessment on so-called human nature, for the event is merely the resulting effect of an environmental cause, meaning all human behavior is shaped by culture, and all culture is maintained for thousands of years via social indoctrination, giving rise to social constructs and belief systems that we carry down to this day. When we think of the traits of a human, we tend to think of the negative aspects of the human psyche, such as greed. This is because for thousands of years, humans have been raised into systems that are structured to generate greed. The economy is based on a model that is designed to maintain poverty. It is designed to split humans into classes of society, creating the illusion of value, which further creates more social constructs that we deem to be right and normal. Valuing worth based on status. The illusion of human nature is used to justify the existence of primitive societal paradigms, which is why the people passively allow the hierarchical order to exist. Every society is made to serve the ruling elite, and all societies are maintained by societal engineering, so to speak. Religious, educational, political, and cultural systems are specifically designed to maintain the current paradigm that we deem to be right and normal, due to our assumption that this is all part of human nature. And our societies operate within the paradigm of thought that says human beings are above all forms of life, that we are the apex of evolution, that the universe and all life in it are an accident, a chance, a byproduct of mechanistic operations that are completely random. This paradigm of thought is the basis of our cultural and mental conditioning, creating the distorted ideology that has affected the minds of the masses. Despite the obvious differences in every country, they are all operating within the same paradigm of thought: economic growth. This drive to attain money is present in all societies, giving the illusion that this has always been a part of life. These ideological systems operate under the assumption that the earth has infinite resources. A delusion for the deluded who justify their contribution to the destruction of the biosphere. All societal engineering starts within the mind of the individual, collectively shaping the culture and political structure of society, which in turn manifests in the architectural design of cities. So you see, our collective frame of reference shapes the reality around us, both psychologically and physically. Societal engineers use this knowledge to maintain the blueprint of reality. The education system plays a crucial part in societal engineering, formatting the mind of the new generation with distorted value systems before sending them off to the workforce. The education systems of the world were designed as a filtration system with the intention of producing obedient workers who obey authority without question. If we were to act now and change the fundamentals of any society, we would have to start with the education system. The education system of our society in particular is based on an old model that is in desperate need of change, and yet we've been conditioned to believe that the problem is not the education system itself, but with the children. A way to shift our focus from the true source of the problem, rather than investigate the root of the issue, which is our economic system. Children naturally have inquisitive minds, as evidenced by their curiosity. But it is we adults who snuff out their creativity by limiting their experience of reality with the institutions they are placed in, as well as the distractions we put before them. Institutions that have long since conditioned us to be unimaginative and simple-minded. Children are raised into conditions that narrow their thought processes down to superficial and materialistic garbage. Infants are introduced to material objects, in which we call toys, instilling the sense of ownership and possessions into their mind.
When you hand a girl a doll, you're placing a set. You're beginning to manipulate people. Everybody's afraid of controlling human behavior. You're always controlling behavior.
As they grow, they are constantly downloading societal programming. By the time they reach adulthood, they are so entrenched within their societal programming that they do not see beyond the veil.
I don't think that you have a clue what it's like to communicate with these kids. And we are losing them to apathy, to this prescribed nonsense. They are slipping away.
Even the fact that the system has a lot of stupidity in it, I think, has a function. You know, it means that people are filtered out for obedience. If you can guarantee lots of stupidity in the educational system, you know, like stupid assignments and things like that, you know that the only people who make it through are people like me and like most of you, I guess, who are willing to do it no matter how stupid it is, because we want to go to the next step. When you go to the elite universities, you find more obedience and conformity, probably because you're getting the students who were better able to do it. The problem is that you can't have progress this way.
My solutions to the education system were presented in previous videos, but I will go into the details here. Applying the understanding of how the brain shapes its perception of reality based on the environment of which it is placed, imagine if elementary schools were redesigned into science centers. Picture this model for education. Free-range education within a curriculum. The elementary school building will be divided into sections based on the field of study. The child will be free to choose whatever they want to learn based on how they feel on any given day. This will give the child a chance to develop their own passions and talents. If the child wishes to learn about the universe, for example, they may venture into the planetarium section to explore the cosmos. Utilizing virtual reality, we can transport children into the universe, into the microscopic worlds. Doing so will expand the range of awareness about the nature of reality from an early age. This virtual reality technology will also provide connection to other kids at different schools around the world, allowing children to learn about different cultures through the VR experience, a chance to mend all cultures together from childhood. The math department will be structured in a way that engages the mind in a creative and fun way. You see, the problem with our current education system's approach to mathematics is that they fail to make the connection between math and its use in everyday life. In order to make math interesting, we must showcase that the universe expresses itself in mathematical form. It is said that harmonics and math are the language of the universe, and that there are systems of mathematics that display this in an artistic fashion. Sacred geometry, for example, is one such discipline, which renders reality into art based on mathematical formations found throughout life. And from this art arises the philosophy that the universe is an intelligent thing with a purpose. By designing school in a manner that illustrates this fundamental aspect of being alive, we can ignite passion within the hearts of children. Creativity and passion is what drives a human being, so school should be designed to cater this aspect of ourselves. Another critical aspect of this new education system will be the implementation of martial arts and the study of the philosophies that pertain. Martial arts instills a sense of honor and respect within the youth. This specific change will solve the problem of discipline among children, especially when meditation is implemented into the daily life of any child. Rather than overstimulating the child's mind with useless garbage, we could give them an opportunity to ground themselves on a daily basis, applying meditation before and after every martial arts class. Fitness in general is a fundamental aspect of a human being, so we will design fitness courses within the school building rather than a basic gymnasium that is found in all modern schools. Agriculture and cultivation will also be taught to the youth within greenhouses specialized for different climates found around the world. This model of schooling quite literally teaches the fundamentals of life. If we were to spend a fraction of our budget on education rather than weapons of mass destruction, we can easily reshape the entire education system from the ground up, including the architecture of school buildings.
The shameful thing about our century is that there was only one Edison, one Louis Pasteur, one Nikola Tesla, one Madame Curie. We should have had thousands of them, and we will, once we get rid of the artificial boundaries that separate people. Once we get rid of nationalism, patriotism, again, I do not mean to offend anybody. All that I ask you to do is think about this, toss it around.
Unfortunately, the education systems of the world are owned and controlled by the same global elitists that control the other fundamental aspects of society, such as energy cultivation, the economy, and the military-industrial complex. These global elitists dictate the direction of the human race via societal engineering, keeping us all subservient in a system that is purposefully mundane.
So all of the artificial structures and artificiality of all societies, they are all primitive today. They are all backward. The very fact that we use political systems, the very fact that there are Democrats and Republicans and notions about how the world ought to be governed. That you're indoctrinated to a set of values that are unreal.
People will deny their indoctrination as a method of self-preservation. For we identify ourselves with where we are coming from and the culture we were born into, all of which shapes your frame of reference of reality. So what appears to be right and normal is all dependent on your frame of reference. People can be born into a distorted system and never acknowledge it due to their indoctrination. And make no mistake, every major empire believes that their way of being is the greatest in the world, the the apex of human achievement. Just in the same way, we believe that our Western capitalistic societies are the apex of human achievement. This is to maintain the control systems that serve the ruling elite. Every civilization in recorded history was structured to serve the ruling class. Some would say that this is the result of human nature. However, we have shown previously that human nature is a false concept. What appears to be human nature is simply human behavior within a specific set of circumstances for thousands of years. And so, the specific phase of the human story, we've been indoctrinated to live in a certain way for the benefit of a small group of people. And the same goes for every society. The monarchies of today are the super rich, the multi-billionaires that control our media, our food and water supply, and our governments. We do not live in democratic societies as many are brainwashed to believe. The super rich host elections as a way to trick you into thinking that you have power, when in reality you are voting for an actor playing a role for whichever special interest group that he or she represents. Countries are simply sectors of land controlled by the oligarchy. The tension between superpowers is a feud between these ruling elitists who see the world as a chessboard and we are the pawns. Through generational indoctrination, the materialistic paradigm has transferred from culture to culture throughout history, manifesting civilizations that are designed to destroy the natural order of this planet, disrupting the balance that is the circle of life. Human beings belong to the Earth family tree, not only genetically, but atomically, and therefore should be part of the circle of life. The mental disease that is materialism did not originate from a single culture, as many tend to think, for the disease of materialism and greed has no ethnicity. It is a mental construct that is maintained through generations, and it has been used as a weapon against humanity. A mental prison that has cut us off from our spiritual roots, our connection to nature, and the universe itself, severing our connection to spirit. Indeed, in our society, such notions of spirituality are met with ridicule from dogmatic scientists, as well as violent opposition from religious fundamentalists. This is because the truth will be hated by those who are manipulated. Stories such as Plato's allegory in the cave perfectly illustrate this. Imagine a cave in which there are 3 prisoners. These prisoners have been here since birth and have never seen outside the cave. They believe that the only world that is real is the wall before them. One of the prisoners eventually escapes from their bindings, and he leaves the cave only to be shocked at the world he discovers outside the cave. He realizes that his former view of reality was wrong. He returns to the cave to inform the other prisoners of his discovery. They do not believe him, and they threaten to kill him if he tries to set them free. The prisoners enslave themselves based on what they believe is real, based on their frame of reference. What I've learned from studying slavery is that in order to enslave an entire group of people, you must remove their language, culture, and value systems and replace them with your own.
It's almost like we've been conditioned so well through such a long process that now it is us who are enslaving ourselves mentally.
Cutting them off from their roots and from who they are, depriving them of a sense of identity, instilling a void within. This has been done to the human race on a mass scale, but in a very subtle way. A multi-generational mental programming process, slowly shifting humanity into a production-consumption-based species, no different from a virus that is destroying the Earth. What allows this to go on is the facade of normality within the structure of society. The average person doesn't see the issue with how we live, simply because their frame of reference lacks the necessary pieces of information and experience that would generate an emotional reaction to the truth. Social institutions such as religion, economics, education, and the state are all intricately woven into the frame of reference. They act as mental programs for the mind. These programs drive a wedge between reality and the self, which sounds counterintuitive to those who are plugged into the matrix, for they view people who want to make a change as those who are not living in reality. It is the perfect irony. As one undergoes the process of self-actualization, it becomes clear that the world has been replaced with a dream, a mental prison that is the matrix in the form of our societies. This matrix has instilled distorted value systems into the minds of the masses, infecting their hearts with the sickness of greed.
When I was a young man, growing up in New York City, I refused to pledge allegiance to the flag. Of course, I was sent to the principal's office, and he asked me, "Why don't you want to pledge allegiance? Everybody does." I said, "Everybody once believed the earth was flat, but that doesn't make it so." I explained that America owed everything it has to other cultures and other nations, and that I would rather pledge allegiance to the earth and everyone on it. Needless to say, it wasn't long before I left school entirely, and I set up a lab in my bedroom. There I began to learn about science and nature. I realized then that the universe is governed by laws, and that the human being, along with society itself, was not exempt from these laws. Then came the crash of 1929, which began what we now call the Great Depression. I found it difficult to understand why millions were out of work, homeless, starving, while all the factories were sitting there. The resources were unchanged. It was then that I realized that the rules of the economic game were inherently invalid. Shortly after came World War II, where various nations took turns systematically destroying each other. I later calculated that all the destruction and wasted resources spent on that war could have easily provided for every human need on the planet. Since that time, I have watched humanity set the stage for its own extinction. I have watched as the precious finite resources are perpetually wasted and destroyed in the name of profit and free markets. I have watched the social values of society be reduced into a base artificiality of materialism and mindless consumption. And I have watched as the monetary powers control the political structure of supposedly free societies. I'm 94 years old now, and I'm afraid my disposition is the same as it was 75 years ago. This shit's got to go.
Out of ignorance, the masses willingly partake in this money game. We pass down these ways to our children, and they pass it down to their children. Just as we allow these elitists to rule over us, we allow their mental programming to govern our lives. And we incorporate this mental programming into our habitual behaviors that, over time, frames our perception of right and normal.
The history of civilization is very much a history of varying degrees of human enslavement. Not only are those in power vastly outnumbered by those over whom they rule, but governments rely on the subjugated populations to provide them with a continual supply of resources and manpower. If one day enough people refused to obey and stopped surrendering their wealth and property, their oppressors would, in the words of Le Boetti, become naked and undone and as nothing, just as, when the root receives no nourishment, the branch withers and dies. Hence, mass submission to even the most oppressive political regimes is always a voluntary servitude, one based on popular consent, as Le Boetti explains. Obviously, there is no need of fighting to overcome this single tyrant, for he is automatically defeated if the country refuses consent to its own enslavement. It is not necessary to deprive him of anything, but simply to give him nothing. As ruling classes have long known that to maintain power, they must play an active role in engineering consent. Plays, farces, spectacles, gladiators, strange beasts, medals, pictures, writes Le Boetti, and other such opiates. These were for ancient peoples the bait towards slavery, the price of their liberty, the instruments of tyranny. In the modern day, these instruments of tyranny have changed form, but their essence remains the same. The endless supply of mindless diversions provided by the mass media and entertainment industry, the numbing effects of pharmaceutical drugs, and the dramatic farce of political elections all serve to distract the attention of the populace away from the reality of their enslavement.
Human beings are creatures of habit. We are known to get stuck in habitual cycles. As the fossil record shows, the early Homo sapiens took millions of years to shift from one way of living to another. We have all been stuck in a cycle of materialism that can only lead to our self-destruction.
When you break the patterns that have been established by existing society, you begin to move people in a new direction.
We know that working our whole lives away feels like imprisonment or paid slavery. Just as any trapped animal that yearns for freedom, we human beings yearn for freedom, and within the depths of our hearts, we suffer from our confinement. Our separation from nature is a separation from true freedom, and this separation left a hole in our hearts that we try to fill with short-term pleasures.
Just as there have always existed those who seek to rule and exploit others, so too in all ages there exist individuals who instinctively rebel against any form of servitude, and thus are tortured by the chains which others appear not to notice. Even if liberty had entirely perished from the earth, Le Boetti writes, such men would have to invent it. For them, slavery has no satisfactions, no matter how well disguised. Those who comprise this elite vanguard of freedom devote much of their time to educating themselves and developing their critical capacities for the sake of awakening others to the nefarious and deceptive nature of political rule. This work is done in the realization that if a critical mass becomes aware of their enslavement and of the true value of freedom, voluntary servitude on a mass scale will end quite abruptly.
It does not take a bloody revolution to change the system, however. All that is required is mass dissociation from the established order. Deprive those in power, and their power fades.
It is painful to deaden your awareness when life is beautiful. When what you do goes out to people and makes their lives better. And if you want a world without war, without hatred, without crime, and without stupidity, it can be arranged if you follow this bit. If we consider at some time, which society will at a later time, I hope it will be sooner, that all of the earth become the common heritage of all nations. all of the resource of the earth, the common heritage of all nations. And if you believe in God, if you understand the teachings of all religions, there were no property lines in heaven, no banks, no personal positions in which one person is elevated above another. That if the earth were the common heritage of all nations and all of the artificial boundaries removed that separate people, there would be no basis for war, no basis for armament. The world you live in is an old world. Its language is old. Its values are old.
I want to make it clear to any parent out there that what you expose your child to and your actions is you deciding what direction our species will go, one person at a time. Why not gear humanity into a direction in which we manifest a society where all life is treated with respect and sanctity? A society where every single human being has access to education, clean water, food, shelter, and the luxuries of life. Our current societies operate within a linear economy, a take, make, and throw away society that wastes the Earth's precious resources by mass producing the same items over and over. With that fact alone, it should be obvious that there is enough resources on the planet to support a civilization of utopian proportions that provides for all. In order to make it happen, we must recode the blueprint of reality. The blueprint of reality is dependent on the collective frame of reference. Each individual mind shapes reality based off of the experiences of the being. These experiences are information for the brain. This information is based on sensory inputs. What we see, hear, taste, smell, and touch provides information about the nature of reality. Our daily surroundings have a huge effect on us. Everything from roads to plazas is all designed around commerce. Our civilizations are designed to maximize efficiency for economic growth. The Founding Fathers considered the psychological aspects of the cities that they designed. They designed civilization so that our attention is directed towards the immediate surroundings. Most people's perception on life is that there are roads, buildings, skylines, and horizons, instead of viewing us as part of a greater universe. This is made clear at night. The method of lighting that we use to keep our cities illuminated prevents us from being able to see the universe at night. I believe this was an intentional part of the system's design. Much like how we have severed our connection to our roots and severed our connection to spirit, we have severed our connection to the stars, which is the ultimate severance of our identity. You see, we are all made up of star stuff. What I mean by that is, the chemical properties of your body are the elements of the earth. The elements of the earth originate from the remnants of a star that went supernova. In fact, we are the offspring of stars and planets. A revelation critical to the frame of reference of all human beings, because this gives us a sense of what we actually are. With enough people self-actualizing to the true nature of reality, a shift into a new cultural paradigm will occur. Remember, culture is an emergence of the collective matrix that is designed within each mind. In order to phase out this mundane system, we must start with the source of social programming, the education system, as explained in part 2. From there, we would have to lay out a multi-generational plan, a 100-year project divided into sections of progression. The first quarter will focus on the reshaping of culture via the education system. The idea behind this education system is to simply showcase the nature of reality. Doing so will give human beings the sense of what we are. During the second quarter of this reconstruction project, the children will have grown to be key members of society, politicians and influencers who will begin the next phase of the plan, the actual redesign of human civilization. This process will be a global effort and will generate jobs of all kinds during the 25-year span of time. This shouldn't be too hard to imagine considering that we already work for meaningless jobs in our society. And finally, the phasing out of all monetary-based economic systems will naturally come after the completion of the redesigning phase, for the cities we will design will be maintained by automation. Money does not have a purpose in a society where machines do all the menial tasks. Giving people the opportunity to pursue their passions. Everything from agriculture to city maintenance will be operated by machines programmed by engineers. This multi-generational reconstruction project will create jobs for everyone during the transition, as this current monetary system will still be used during the first 3 quarters of the process, making the shift practically unnoticeable for each generation involved. This process of phasing out between paradigms is not new to the human experience, for we have always gradually shifted from one paradigm to another. However, the major difference between this paradigm shift and the rest in history is that this will be a united effort across the planet.
This is what the Venus Project advocates. The Venus Project is a design for culture in which we bridge the difference between all nations. How is that done? By a universal language, the blueprint. If you open a blueprint in Japan, they know what you're talking about. If you write a prescription for England, Japan, France, the pharmacologist understands that. There's no discrepancies. There's no ambivalence. I wonder what he meant by that. It's clear. The language we use daily is not. The shameful thing about our century is that there was only one Edison, one Louis Pasteur, one Nikolai Tesla, one Madame Curie. We should have had thousands of them, and we will, once we get rid of the artificial boundaries that separate people. Once we get rid of nationalism, patriotism, again, I do not mean to offend anybody. All that I ask you to do is think about this, toss it around.
This paradigm shift will be the definitive paradigm shift, the result of the actions of humans who have sacrificed their lives over the course of history. No matter how distant the events of time or how unrelated these people were from one another, they as human beings recognized that their people were imprisoned by a corrupt system that changes its form. Like a disease, it spreads from one group of people to another throughout time. It crystallized into the form of our current societies. And yet, it relies on us to keep it alive. We together form the paradigm, and once we recognize what that means, we can then take the necessary steps to change the world.